Conditions mildly bullish, pushing out of this support area right here. S&P futures up 0.68 this morning. Majority bullish on the daily and the 60-minute time frame, and shifting back up. You can see shifting back up to that bullish zone here on futures. So we'll see if we get a follow through on that on S&P 500. S&P 500 chart majority bullish on the daily, almost there on the 1 hour time frame. We've got some overhead resistance here sitting at 60.40 on S&P 500. That could come into play, but a nice bounce here. We're also seeing that inside internals with breadth overall sitting now at 36. So we're pushing back to the upside. 36% of stocks now back up above the 50-day and starting to get a trend shift here. We're also seeing VIX, the volatility starting to move back down again. A couple of days ago had shifted back to the downside, majority bearish on the daily as well as majority bearish on the 1 hour. That is bullish for stocks. When we have an opposite move in VIX, then it's typically the opposite for stocks as well. So bullishness in breadth overall setting up, some nice bullishness in price pattern and momentum, and some bullishness in VIX. The only real issue is where we're at in this trend. Okay, we're at the upper end of this range. We've moved this out to this weekly time frame, and we're just really expanded towards the top end of this range versus a compressed state earlier in the trend. We're now at the latter end of the trend, and the probability for this sustaining and then continuing to move higher is just smaller, where we get these really wide moves right here. So expect some of these rallies to just be, create some additional volatility and some chop. We may see a real solid push higher, maybe one last real big push higher, excuse me, but nonetheless, we're seeing some support happening here in the markets. Let's jump over and take a look at bonds. We're also seeing some bullishness in or for stocks in bonds themselves. They certainly have been very volatile lately. We're seeing the 2-year yield, not that one, let's go down one more here. The 2-year yield pushing, coming back down a little bit. Let me jump off that. I'm on the weekly time frame here, back to this daily time frame, and you can see where it's sitting now. Just trend is compressed, and you can see it's starting to shift back down a little bit here. That could be a good thing again for equities as well. If we start to see bonds moving higher, interest rates moving lower, and equities considering that as positive, as we're seeing, decent inflation numbers, decent economic numbers. Markets are continuing to digest some of that information, but seeing a little bit of a move back lower in yields on the 10-year as well. So that's pushing back to the downside. Again, it's still in a strong uptrend, could just be a retracement counter trend, but nonetheless, a little bit of a tick to the downside is helpful for the market's perspective. If we take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, also moving back up into that buy zone, majority bullish there on the daily as well as on the 1 hour time frame. This is a nice example. We're getting trends that are compressing as it's starting to shift back this other direction. Internally on that 60-minute time frame, that's what it starts to look like when we see trends starting to shift, and so this could be an early indication of a trend shift for the Dow as well. And NASDAQ, not quite as strong in technology, but a decent day as well. Russell 2000 still having a little bit of weakness, but also getting a decent bounce right here at these levels. All markets having very similar type bullish price patterns right here, and we'll see if we get some continued momentum on this. We did see oil have a real nice push higher the last few weeks. It's towards the upper end of its trend range and continuing to gain some momentum. That 1 hour time frame a little bit expanded. Could see some continued consolidation towards the upper end of this trend on USO. GLD, which is the ETF for gold, also majority bullish across the board and having a decent spike there this morning. Could see some nice movement in gold. Silver also typically following that price pattern closely to gold as well. Let's take a look at a couple of price patterns here. We've got SPIR in the new buy scan, which is pulling up nicely, getting a nice confirmation bar, increased volume. It's a good looking pattern here. We also have KODK, which is an interesting stock, an interesting pattern, and a company like Kodak still trying to reinvent itself, but getting a nice pop here and moving back up into momentum, increasing volume the last couple of days on KODK as well. That'll do it for today's update. Everyone have a fantastic day today.